wrong for us, even though this is a soccer show and we're soccer guys. I don't think it's wrong for us to say what's very clear, that NYCFC are secondary tenants, that they're the little brother in this situation, that the Yankees are going to dominate the headlines. This story made the back pages because it's the Yankees, not because it's NYCFC. And we saw that when Mark Teixeira is name checked on the Daily News back page, but it's NYCFC coach, not Jason Christ, because nobody knows who he is yet.
Exactly. Right. And that's a storyline you're going to be dealing with all season long. It's interesting. I've had the opportunity this week to speak to a lot of people in and around the Yankee organization and around the New York City FC organization. And it's interesting, as you said, when you put things into perspective. If NYC, people like to talk about in our circle, and I always come on the show and I talk about the soccer bubble. We're all living in the soccer bubble. You know, we live, we breathe it. We look at the achievements of Major League Soccer, of U.S. soccer, and they're huge, but comparable to other sports. It's very fair to say that some numbers are minuscule, whether you're talking about ratings, attendance, things of that nature. In this instance, what I'm talking about is investment. You know, you have New York City FC, the New York Yankees and Manchester City coming together, paying $100 million to start up a franchise. But what is $100 million if it interferes with the multi-billion-dollar business that is the New York Yankees?
You know what that is, Dave? That's half a first baseman. That's what that is.
Exactly. Thank you very much. It's half a first baseman. It's probably half a reserve shortstop. You don't know. I mean, this is a big business. Major League Baseball is a huge business. The Yankees are a huge business in and of themselves. They have a legal department within the Yankee organization, which is incredibly protective of not just their intellectual property, but the game, the players on the field. And if anything interferes with that, NYCFC is going to be treated as a tenant, and that's what's going to happen. I've come on this show plenty of times in the past, and I've told you in the past, I don't know why it was news this week when I tweeted it, but I've told you in the past, the New York Times has said that there's a lease for 2-3 years at Yankee Stadium, and all I keep on hearing is that it's a rollover lease. It's year to year, and the Yankees will take a look at what soccer is like and how it impacts the play of the baseball team, and decide whether or not this is a long-term relationship they can have at Yankee Stadium. NYCFC will go on, but if they get in the way of the Yankee monster, there's going to be problems.
Absolutely, and we may wake up in a couple of years and NYCFC may be playing, I don't know, at MetLife, or I don't even know what other options there would be. Maybe they can share short with the Cosmos, Dave. Obviously that's the worst case scenario for NYCFC. I had a caller on this show yesterday. I think it was Washington, if I'm not mistaken. He's going to the game on Sunday. He's very excited, season ticket holder. He's glad that there's a team in the city for MLS. And he said that from a selfish perspective, he's actually okay with all of this drama. And he's okay with NYCFC getting some pressure from the Yankees and the players because it may stoke some fires in terms of getting out of that building, getting their own place. Now, they can only move as fast as the legislative process, the mayor's office will let them move. But at the same time, they could become complacent in a perfect world where Yankee Stadium is a great venue, or as great as it can be.
Well, that's rather short-sighted, because you have to think of the people that are in charge of this team. They're no novices in the sport. Jason Christ, Claudio Reyna, they're pushing the sporting side of this. They're pushing the organization forward. And I doubt, no matter what they say publicly, I doubt that they look at Yankee Stadium as a comfortable situation in any way. Even if the field is pristine on any playing day, there's always going to be the issue lingering of being, nobody wants to be a tenant in their own stadium.
Right.
The Cosmos suffer with it enough. NYCFC are going to go through it themselves. Major League Soccer has had to, delay their schedule release this year because of negotiations with the Yankees and Major League Baseball about how they're going to schedule games. This is not a comfortable situation. They're constantly reminded they need to move and get a new stadium. What has happened over the last couple of years is that this NY2 experiment, which has now become NYCFC, the moving parts have been moving quite quickly. When you first talked about this team, there was supposed to be property in Flushing Meadow Park. That didn't come to fruition. As the team continued to grow, there was supposed to be a purchase of land just south of Yankee Stadium. That didn't happen. That went to the wayside. You have an administration, de Blasio, who's a new mayor, who really isn't looking at building anything outside of, affordable housing, things of that nature. That is more his wheelhouse, not so much entertainment, business, and sporting events. So it makes it even more difficult to secure the proper land. NYCFC is looking. There's a fire lit there, but just because you're looking, just because you're hunting for the white whale, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to find it.
All right, let's pretend that all of this stuff is hunky dory and happy, and nobody's upset about field conditions and everything's grand. Sunday they open up the home schedule, first ever home game. If I'm not mistaken, the entire stadium has been made available. I don't know if that means they're going to sell it out, but certainly they've sold enough tickets to think that they can get more people in that building than they originally planned. How big of a deal is this going to be, Dave?
Well, speaking to NYCFC officials, again at media day, they're thinking as of right now it's roughly 35,000 that they have in attendance. They broke the 15,000 mark for season ticket holders, which is a tremendous base. But do I think the Yankee Stadium's going to be sold out? I don't think so.
No.
I know that they're making every effort to bring in as many eyes, as many new eyes as possible. I've heard from several people that have children in youth soccer camps and different leagues throughout the area that NYCFC officials have come down and started giving away tickets as well. Comps just to have kids out there and experience the game themselves. So
I got no problem with.
They can't fill the stadium. But,
I got no. I got no problem with papering I'm sorry, Dave. I don't got no problem with papering the room a little bit. I know that Orlando may have done something similar. And look, they had a fantastic atmosphere. They got the 62,000 that they got into that building. And NYCFC, as you said, they're not going to sell out Yankee Stadium, which I think is capacity 50 or 55, somewhere in that range. But 35,000 is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. And every other team in this league outside of Seattle and Orlando, obviously, would kill to have opening weekend be that big.
And look at the impact that this has had. I think that you got to give them their due. The past week, 2 weeks, NYCFC have been able to garner attention in the area. They've managed to secure newspaper space. There's more stories going around. Today, there's a 16-page insert in the New York Daily News specifically focused on NYCFC. Paid advertising, whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
It's in there, and it's there for the exposure of the match. So to that end, it's already a winner. Carrying it throughout the rest of the season is going to be the measure of success.
Sure.
I think this winter was a mess for NYCFC. They had New York to themselves. The Giants stunk. The Jets stunk. The Islanders were okay. The Rangers were okay, but nobody cares about hockey other than niche fans. And I'm a hockey fan, so I could say that here in New York City. The Nets, the Knicks. Look, there really was no other game in town, and it was a perfect opportunity for NYCFC to fill that gap, but they didn't. There was just too much flux, too many things going on. Now that the game is approaching, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the momentum grow. Again, 35,000, as you said, nothing to sneeze at. And an absolutely, really an inspiring base for Major League Soccer to do over this New York market, to get it right this time around. But let's see how Yankee Stadium holds up this weekend, because first impressions are going to be incredibly important, as they always are in this town. And NYCFC has put the right foot forward, starting with that pitch.
Okay, Dave. This isn't usually what we talk about when we get you on the air, but I know that your analytical mind is as good as anybody's. When you look at this team and what they have to do against New England to get 3 points at home, what do you see? I mean, got to get service to David Villa first and foremost, but where else are the issues for NYCFC?
I think the club is too narrow. They're too narrow and too predictable. That's what you saw in Orlando. There's nobody really on the flanks that can break through and stretch a defense. And that, to me, is the most alarming part of this scenario. I mean, look, this summer, you're going to have Frank Lampard in town. And I don't know if you've ever seen Frank Lampard play, but I wouldn't necessarily call him a speed demon.
No.
And I think that's what they need. I think this midfield needs somebody that's going to open up play. If they're going to use Nick Disker in that scenario, in that situation, I guess that's okay. But at this point, I find the club to be very predictable. Now, having said that, you have to commend them for their performance on defense. I mean, if you saw that starting 11 and you're looking at Jason Hernandez and Chris Winger as your starting center backs, you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, what, the Price has lost the plot.
Right. What
exactly is happening here? Where's Andres Mendoza? Where is George John, who's still injured and recovering and what have you? Is this going to be enough? Well, they prove that defensively, they're quite stout. They're able to keep their formation. They're very concentrated on defense, very focused, and that's going to help them. It's the attack I'm more worried about because, as you saw, Jason, David Villa was on an island by himself, and that was mostly because there was no width. Everything was down the middle. Everything was predictable, and you can't count on that perfect pass down the middle of the pitch to open up a match. It's just not going to happen. You need somebody out on the wings to split those defenders.
Well, Kyrie Shelton changed that game a little bit for them. That helped a bit, and obviously, but you don't want David Villa having to drift out wide to pick up the ball. That's not his game. He's not Kaká, for example, on the other side. He's not even Thierry Henry. To flip it over to the Red Bull. So you need somebody who can provide that width. That's going to be interesting to see. Again, New England comes in a little bit limping. Theo Bunbury injured. Obviously, Jermaine Jones coming back. Whether or not Lee Wynn is available will be a question. But I got a couple minutes here with you, and I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the New York Cosmos out there on the island. They've got a plan to go down to Cuba to be the first team in 37 years, I think, first professional American sports franchise to play a game. They're going to play a friendly against the Cuban national team in Havana. That's a big deal because of the, embargo being lifted, Dave. Otherwise, I mean, well, first speak to the plan to go down there and what kind of role this has in the wider Cosmos international profile plan.
Well, we've spoken about this again on the show in the past. The Cosmos are trying to do something unique, which is concentrate on global games, getting their name out there in order to grow the game domestically. You listen to that and it kind of strikes you. How does that happen necessarily? Well, you start off with a player of the name and qualities of a Raul. Raul by himself has opened several doors for this club. Hong Kong, that Hong Kong friendly that they had earlier this winter, was a rousing success. You had almost 20,000 fans in attendance, being there to watch the Cosmos and Raul perform, and it's a kind of treatment that a Premiership club would normally get in those kind of situations. And by the end of it, the Cosmos go home $200,000 richer. I mean, that was their prize pot for participating in the tournament, which was really just a one-match throw-off. But regardless, those are the kind of exhibition matches that made the Cosmos such an entertaining team in the past, and what the club is trying to do now is create those kind of moments, those transcendent moments, those headline-making moments. And if you want to make headlines, especially in today's climate, what better way than to go to Cuba? I mean, free advertising all over the place. They've been everywhere. Time Magazine, each one of the daily newspapers here in New York. They've made headlines throughout the world just for having that kind of impact, to be able to open up this country after so many years and be the first professional sports team to play in Cuba. It's huge. It's history making. My measure for this is going to be at the gate. You know, are all of these global efforts going to sell season tickets? Will Raul be enough to drag people out to Hofstra University? That's the true measuring stick. But you have to commend them for their ambition. This one,
I would say
quite ambitious.
I would say that if you're judging them strictly on being an American soccer club in the same mold as all of these MLS teams and other NASL teams, they may take some hits because they are ranging outside of what is the typical plan. But on the other hand, they are the Cosmos. They have a legacy. They have a name that they should be leveraging, and they're doing that. It's fascinating to watch. I'm not sure where to put them yet, Dave. And before I let you go, very, very quickly here, and there's some subtext that I can't mention, are you aware of any developments at all on the Cosmos Stadium front?
At the moment, there are certain things in motion. At the moment, though, it's the same story it's been for months. The Empire State Development Corp has not approved or rejected the idea of rewarding the land at Belmont to the New York Cosmos. There's been plenty of rumblings. I know that several Cosmos officials and fans thought that the State of the State address this January, perhaps the governor would have given his okay at that point. But as of right now, things stand status quo. Unless something drastically changes this morning, things are at a status quo. The Cosmos aren't necessarily moving anywhere. And if you ask some people, which again I cannot verify, but if it's the rumor that you're talking about, some folks seem to believe that Major League Soccer may be stepping in themselves to lobby against such a move. But as of right now, that's unproven. I'm investigating it. I haven't heard anything to verify it just yet. But
Okay.
I'm on that as well.
Yeah, it is strictly rumor at this point from our perspective. That doesn't mean that it is not happening. We're just not able to confirm that. Certainly Dave is on top of it over at Empire of Soccer. Should be following him at Empire of Soccer on Twitter as well. If there is any updates on that front, I'm sure he'll have them shortly. I know in the Cosmos, the little Cosmos bubble, this has been a big story, and it has not yet been addressed by us for various reasons, but most of them doing with journalistic integrity, Dave, and we don't want to cast any stones. So he's looking out for that. You should be looking out for his stuff over there, Dave. And thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it. Get well.
I appreciate it, and hopefully next time I won't sound like an R&B singer.
There you go. I don't know why that would be an improvement, Dave. Soccer Morning brought to you by World Soccer Talk. When we come back, Jeff Kassouf from Equalizer Soccer and NBC Sports will join us. We're going to review the Algarve Cup for the U.S. women. What does it mean for their chances at the World Cup this summer? Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Hey, Jason. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Hey there, it's Jason Davis, and if you're like me and love playing fantasy soccer games, I want to let you know about a fantastic new game called Draft11.com. This is not your usual fantasy soccer game. Draft11.com is different for two major reasons. First, it's a daily fantasy soccer game, and second, it gives you an opportunity to win cash. So instead of playing an entire season and competing against, say, the 3 million people who play Fantasy Premier League and winning nada, you can play Draft11.com over one match day against up to 10 people. And if your team wins, you win. Cash, not points. So go ahead and support our new sponsor that's helping bring Soccer Morning to you every single day. Head over to Draft11.com, sign up for a free account, and take a shot at trying to win some cold, hard cash. Thanks.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning. On the phone line with me now from Equalizer Soccer and NBC is our friend Jeff Kassouf. Got something good to talk about with Jeff, and that's the U.S. women lifting the Algarve Cup with their 2-0 win over France. Jeff, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
First and foremost, when it comes to this win against France, remember they just lost to France by the identical scoreline last month. Forget about the revenge angle, Jeff. I mean, ultimately, all of these teams are trying to prepare for a World Cup this summer. Does it indicate
Right.
that maybe some of the problems that were being identified under Jill Ellis can be fixed before we get to Canada?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of that. I think that the biggest thing is, I know that a few others have mentioned this, that, in a tournament setting, the U.S. is built for games like this. I mean, it's 4 games in 8 days. They have a deep squad that maybe is deeper than really anybody else, so they can rotate in. I mean, you look at who stood out in that final and maybe even the tournament that you wouldn't expect coming into it, a Julie Johnston, who prior to the tournament had barely even played. She had 1 start. So they're deep. I think that factored in there. And I think this win for the U.S., winning the Algarve Cup more than anything, is a huge confidence boost. I mean, they sort of uniquely thrive off being doubted more than any other team in the world, and that they love to see some of the headlines that they got in abundance over the past few months as they dropped results and looked uninspiring in matches against France, England, Brazil. So I think they saw all this, and for them, I mean, forget the vindication of beating France, a month later. I think for them, it's the idea that, there's a little bit of a proving wrong here to all the doubters. And this is France was their biggest game going into this World Cup. The rest that remain are just kind of, second tier teams. So this is the biggest test that they'll feel they passed, and that'll be a confidence boost heading into June.
You mentioned that the rest of these teams are second-tier teams. They obviously had a goalless draw with Iceland that created a little bit of buzz because of some comments by the Iceland head coach, and then Ellis shooting back a little bit. Was that the low? I mean, well, not the lowest point in the tournament necessarily, but it certainly wasn't a good moment. Were there lessons learned there? Could you see direct lessons being learned by Ellis, or are we just talking about someone who's throwing some stuff out there, relying on that depth, and maybe getting by on the talent level? Maybe not superior to France, but certainly good enough to beat France on their best day.
Yeah, and I mean, on that note too, France missing a few very key starters, center backs, Luis and Nasib as well. So I mean, I think that there is a reliance. I think that's a good word, but to her credit, I mean, Jill Ellis is probably the most criticized coach probably in the world right now, just because, I mean, and I think she knows that and knew that coming into this job. But, regardless of the fact that there were some starters missing for France, and, the Kristen Press goal in particular was clearly a moment of individual brilliance, I think that you have to give some credit to Jill Ellis for a month later. I mean, this is what coaching is about, right? I mean, a month later, same opponent, huge game. Are you going to look the same, or are you going to make the necessary adjustments? And, regardless of personnel that was out there, the U.S. made the adjustments. They were able to clog the midfield. You saw Carly Lloyd, she's still in that wide position, which I don't personally agree with, but she was able to pinch in enough to make it almost a 3-woman midfield that clogged that midfield for France, which they absolutely owned on that first game. So, there were adjustments there that you can say, okay, yes, it's personnel, but Ellis saw the adjustments that needed to be made, and ultimately got a result there, which I think is encouraging for her, the team, and somewhat the outlook for a tournament setting come Canada.
Well, in that vein, is this more encouraging because of the clean sheet? And obviously, Hope Solo's part of that, but is it more encouraging for the clean sheet or for get a set-piece goal from Julie Johnston? That's her first ever. That's great. And then Kristen Press with just, as you said, a moment of individual brilliance. The afterburners she's got are impressive. But neither one of those goals in a vacuum are the sort of thing that really show you that as a team, they are going to be dominant with the ball at their feet.
No, and I don't think they are. I mean, look, they'll have stretches of moments. I think that we can say maybe against lesser opponents, but with the group draw and, the possibly pending knockout round, I don't know that there really will be that case come Canada. But I don't see them dominating a game in possession, as you said. I don't see them outplaying, at least technically and possession-wise, a team like France or some of these other top teams. I mean, we saw this against Brazil as well in past months. But they have the ability. I think that's the thing that we have to, certainly me and others, I mean, we have to make clear to maybe casual fans who are listening is that this is absolutely still a team that can win the World Cup. We're talking about a 7-game stretch and, one of maybe 4 real contenders. But looking at sort of the trends against France, against Brazil, just looking at what Germany is, you have to look and say, of the top 4, maybe this might be team number 4. But look, set pieces, which we saw not only with that Johnston goal, but throughout the tournament, even against England when Alex Morgan scored on another Lauren Holiday free kick. Set pieces can change games, and I think Lauren Holiday has been extremely good at those, whether on corner kicks or free kicks. And, Carly Lloyd, you saw it from Kristen Press in the final. There are game-changing players who can have those moments, and there are enough of them that those moments can come frequently enough that the U.S. can still find itself in a final come July.
All right, forgive forgive this question because it's certainly the type of thing that would come from a casual fan who's not necessarily watching this team week in and week out, Jeff, and I think that's most of the people who are going to be partaking of the tournament this summer. But what's Abby Wambach's role in this team? Obviously, they get a championship with France without Abby Wambach in the starting lineup. Is she a strategic deployment now? Is she going to be playing? Obviously, in a short tournament with the compressed schedule, she can't go out there every time out. But how much does this team still rely on her, and how much can they get away with finding some depth? And obviously, look, there's talented goal scorers. I'm not saying there's not, but she's been such a key figure for them.
Yeah, I think it's trending that way that you mentioned. It's her sort of maybe coming off the bench, maybe being a specific sort of role. You can't rule out her starting because I think that there's just she brings something different, and I know that it's so cliche, and some people are so sick of hearing that, but there's only one of her, and I think probably best utilized of what she is, of great in front of goal, obviously great in the air. It lends itself to late in matches if the U.S. is trailing. I think Tony DeCicco mentioned it on the broadcast on Wednesday that even defensively, if you're looking like, U.S. holding on to a 1-0 lead and defensively sort of getting bombarded, that she's in there for set pieces, for, defensively in the air, which is a little bit of a stretch, I think, in terms of why you would put her in a match with only 3 subs. But I think that she is trending towards probably that 70th minute sub where U.S. needs a goal. But the U.S. has a bunch of those too. So you have to keep in mind that, do you go with Abby in the air, or do you go with someone like Sydney Leroux, who can turn and burn and take on a tired defense at really any in the world? So for Wambach, I think the most important thing that you'll hear from her and that you'll hear from other players is that her role as a leader and sort of even off the field, in a sense, in a leadership role, is huge. And that's not to downgrade what she's doing on the field, but I think she's probably trending towards that second half sub. But don't be surprised if she starts. I know that sounds wishy-washy, but I think it's still sort of TBD.
Yeah, sure. Understandable, and maybe that's what Ellis still needs to figure out here. But we've seen, certainly you could make the argument that a player like Abby Wambach up top, even in a game where you're maybe holding on to a lead and don't need a goal, can be a release valve, a pressure release valve, and that's certainly the way a target for it, and she can be that. Can help a team. Let's move on briefly here and just look ahead. You mentioned the 4 favorites: Brazil, Germany, France, maybe the United States as the number 4 spot. Is that how you would have them right now? Look, whether they beat France, a full strength France or not, certainly they can go toe to toe with them. Germany, maybe best team in the world right now, despite not winning this cup. Where is Brazil, and how much is Brazil still relying on individual brilliance rather than team play?
Yeah, I think perhaps more than ever. You listen to Marta talk, and she says flat out, this is a very young team, a very different team, and she sort of she seems to recognize that finally what we've all known for probably the better part of a decade is that Brazil's a real wild card. They have the talent. They could have 10 average Joes and Marta, and they're still probably going to be a contender just by, her alone and her sort of once-in-a-lifetime skill and brilliance. So I think that Brazil is sort of that 5th wild card. I think that France, despite this result, like I said, a few players missing, a few key players missing. I think France right now still is on the best form in the world. Germany a close number 2. The United States probably in that 3-4 spot, and Japan all of a sudden a bit of a wild card, finishing 9th in the Algarve Cup. A few concerns there, but I think there's still, that's probably your 4, and then Brazil in that 5th spot of a wild card. You just don't know what they're going to bring. One day they're beating the United States, and the other day maybe they're struggling against China. So Brazil kind of continues to be who we know they are, which is not changed over several World Cup cycles, and they just happen to be a bit younger this time. And then, again, I think probably that 6th and really final maybe contender spot of Sweden, who finished, pretty strongly in the Algarve Cup, but continues to sort of have inconsistent results. So I think those are probably your 6. Again, I think France probably the best team in the world right now, but they're probably staring down a Germany quarterfinal by the ridiculous way that this World Cup's going to shake out. So one of the top 2 teams in the world will probably be out in the quarterfinal.
Okay, I was going to ask you about Japan. I'm glad you mentioned them. Let me just, before we move on to an NWSL question, excuse me, Canada, where do the hosts sit right now in your mind, and legitimately, how deep do you think that they can go?
I think that a semifinal is probably realistic in terms of the deepest they can go. There's a certain, depending on whether they finish first or second in that group, and certainly depending on who finishes where in the groups that they would line up with, they have the potential for a pretty easy round of 16 game, and that puts them into the quarterfinal, where I would almost say similarly to the U.S., they're a team that can very much win these one-off games. They're a pretty physical team. Christine Sinclair, look, she's on fire to start 2015, and she, I think herself to some extent admitted that in 2013, 2014, she was a bit off her game in league play with Canada. So for her to be in form, third all-time leading goal scorer in the world in history, for her to be in form at just the right time here is something that could really tip the scales from Canada being maybe out in the quarterfinals, or if they get a tough round of 16 game, to maybe making a semifinal. I know that there's a lot of big-time dreams of winning a World Cup on home soil, but between those top 4 that we mentioned, Canada losing the Cyprus Cup final to England, which is outside of that top 6 and sort of an in-between team, I can't see Canada making a final. I know that's the dream situation for them, but semifinal is probably the best and might be a stretch even, to be honest.
Talking to Jeff Kassouf from Equalizer Soccer. It's a little roundup on the international women's game. Obviously, the U.S. women lifting the Algarve Cup with a win over France. But let's go to the league, the domestic league, Jeff. And I know there's some talk about expansion, and Real Salt Lake may be in the mix, and some good things happening on that front. But one of the negative things happening right now, and something that I've seen that the league intends to address, and our friend Christopher Dwyer on Twitter has asked specifically about this, is a rash of early retirements for women players who are in the NWSL. What accounts for this? I mean, obviously, we know that these women aren't making a ton of money playing in this league, and that can be a significant impediment to keeping a career going. But is that all it is? Is it a matter of injuries? What's the situation?
I don't think it's all it is, but I think it's absolutely the number one factor. I think casual fans, or maybe fans that are big on the men's side, big on MLS, and maybe getting into the women's game, I would say think of early days MLS. What were these players? They were making something ridiculously low that you couldn't even say is livable, especially if you were in like a LA market or, one of these bigger markets. And the baseline salary, the low salary, the low end of the salary here in NWSL is about $6,000 for, you're talking 6+ months when you factor in preseason and everything. So even with, host families covering that, we've all been at a point where we've said, what am I doing with myself? And when you're a 25-year-old, maybe even older, some of these players who are still sort of on the bottom end of rosters, and you're making $6,000 or $10,000 to do this, as much as you love it, that you have to address it. And you see some of these retirements, a few different Breakers players. I mean, they directly mentioned, look, I was offered a job in the corporate world that, whatever it is, we can assume something much more livable.
Yeah.
And they just decided to take it. So I think it is a huge thing, and I think it, as this league grows, this is why this league is considered healthier than the other two. We have to make that clear that, players aren't making ridiculous salaries in comparison to what's being brought in at the gate. But as this league grows, I think it's probably the number one thing to factor in, because there are young players out there who are retiring because they simply can't make any money. I mean, some of these players, this year, you're going to see players that are amateurs playing for free, that are on these rosters while players are away at the World Cup, and they're making nothing. But that's how that's how they're filling these gaps in these early years.
It's one of those things. Obviously, the base of women's players, mostly American, but certainly from other countries as well. Incredibly educated women who have degrees, and they have options. Then, Jeff, and so that cuts both ways. We've seen that in MLS clearly in the early years. Some guys maybe hanging it up at 25 instead of 35 because they had an option to go and, as you said, work in the corporate world. So it's something worth watching here for the NWSL. Again, let me come back briefly to expansion before I let you go. What's the goal? Where are they at? And how many new teams are we looking at in the very near future?
Well, I think that there's quietly probably an initiative to maybe get to an even number. They're at 9 teams. 10 is obviously a lot easier on the schedule. It's a lot easier on a bunch of things. There's no sort of forced bye weeks. So there's a group in Atlanta that seems like they would be the most ambitious for 2016, for a year out from now. Where they actually stand in terms of how ready they would be for 2016 and how much they can get that going, still a little bit of a question mark. They have announced that they would play at Silverbacks Park, which is certainly a good first step. But there's a lot to be done there, I think, still, for that to really be, hey, Atlanta is a leading candidate for 2016. But I think probably the most promising one here, Real Salt Lake, Deloy Hansen continues to be, at the forefront of. I mean, he's been mentioning it. He hasn't made any secret of the fact that this new Real Monarchs team in the USL. Once that stadium gets established, and obviously it needs dates, and part of expanding Real Salt Lake as this club and brand would be bringing in a pro women's team. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably the most promising in terms of 2017 seems the earliest, so maybe that 2-3 years out that Real Salt Lake gets involved, and then we'll see, what else in terms of MLS teams. I think you add RSL to Houston and Portland, which are MLS based. Maybe a couple others get interested, and I think that's probably the direction in terms of really establishing a foothold of really good, secure markets.
Jeff Kassouf from EqualizerSoccer.com. Go read his stuff over there, specifically on the U.S. women and their victory in the Algarve Cup, but also as we get closer to the start of the NWSL season, that stuff as well. Jeff, I appreciate the time. Always fantastic insight. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, man.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open up those phone lines, 347-756-6276. We'll take your tweets as well, at Soccer Morning. It's your time to shine on a Friday. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we are. Phone lines are open. 347-756-6276. What is up, soccer world? What is on your mind today? Is anything happening at all? Is there anything people are talking about, thinking about, discussing? I need you to bring me something, because I feel like, what are we talking about here? What's going on out there in the world ahead of a weekend with a lot of games, stuff to watch? You gonna watch some soccer this weekend? Maybe that's what you're thinking about. Maybe you're getting your plan together. Maybe you're lining up what you're gonna snack on. Maybe you're planning your brunch. People do Premier League and brunch. Yeah, maybe you're prioritizing the MLS games. Maybe you're looking at that schedule and thinking, hey, which is the big game of the weekend? What am I going to watch? Got Orlando and Houston tonight. Owen Coyle versus Adrian Heath. British manager thing. That's fascinating. That's a good storyline, right? Is that the top storyline right now today in the world of American soccer? Could it be? Maybe not. Seattle hosting San Jose. Okay, that's good. New York City FC, obviously. New York City FC, 35,000 people, Yankee Stadium turf, Jason Kreis's narrow formation, no X's left to put mix on the back of an NYCFC jersey. They've run out of X's. That sounds like a tragedy. Can't get mix. The man's wearing mix. You want mix, you can't get it because they have no more X's. If your name's Xavier, and you want to put that on the back, you can't do that because they don't have any X's. What other names out there have X's? Xavier's the only one I can think of right now. Who else has got an X in their name? Rex? If your name is Rex, you can't get a jersey with your name on it. 347-756-6276. Give me a call. Talk about soccer with me. It's fun, I promise. Hit me up on Twitter if you'd rather do it that way. Mike Thomas 19064. Let's give props to Unimos and how awesome it is having a game every Friday. Yes, let's do that. Props. What is Spanish for props? I need to learn that. That is fantastic. We used to have one year, it was like 4 years ago, you had Soccer Night in America or whatever that was called. It wasn't Soccer Night in America. It was something else. But it was a Friday game on Fox Soccer Channel. Maybe it was Soccer Night in America. But I remember this because this was the last year Fox had the MLS contract before it went over to NBC. And they were like, we're going to make a big to-do about this game. We're going to really throw some stuff at it. And again, it was Christopher Sullivan sitting at a desk with a quick goal in front of it. And then they went to the stadium. Good for them. I think that was an improvement. They put their halftime show in the building, but it still wasn't. They weren't really throwing stuff at it. This time around, Fox is really giving it a go. I think we can all say that. Yes, but Friday, Unimos, game tonight, Houston Dynamo, Orlando City Soccer Club. Good stuff. If your name is Max, Robert's got a good point. Agent Rob, Agent E-Rob. If your name is Max, you're screwed. If you want an NYCFC jersey and your name is Max, I'm sorry. You are out of luck. I know some Maxes. I know some people who have named their kids. Jared Dubois' kid's name is Max. Yeah. Can't get his name. Can't get an NYCFC jersey with a kid name on it. 805, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason. This is Derek from LA.
Hey, Derek. What's on your mind today?
Well, you're mentioning NYCFC and the X on the jerseys. I think they need to make Mark Teixeira, the first baseman who came out about the field, make him his own jersey, buy him an X and give it to him. Maybe it'll change his mind.
Man. You can't, Mark Teixeira can't get himself a customized NYCFC jersey until they get that supply of X's replenished. You got a good point.
Well, maybe that's why he's so upset.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. A good point. You got anything else?
What's your opinion about Robbie Keane supposedly re-upping his deal with the Galaxy? Because as a Galaxy supporter, I was kind of convinced that after having such a good run, he was just going to kind of call it quits to go back home.
If he wants to keep playing soccer, he likes LA, and he keeps scoring goals for you, I would throw a party for that.
All right, then I will do that.
There's no sign that the man's slipping, is there?
Oh, no. He's been fantastic. And it was kind of funny watching him last week because it seemed like for 70 minutes, he was just kind of doing whatever he wanted. And then at the end of the game, he decided to play.
Yeah, I do think that there's going to be some growing pains through the post-Landon Donovan era, and they're going to have to figure some things out. But I think Bruce will get it working. Again, you need Chelsea's artist to be next level better than he was last year. You need guys like Villarreal to step up and help fill some of that attacking void. You obviously have a situation with Marcelo Sarvis gone. You got to fill that hole at least until Gerrard shows up. That's going to be a whole thing. So there's going to be some questions in LA. But I think Robbie Keane re-upping, that's good stuff. Appreciate the call, man. 860, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason. It's John from Connecticut.
What's going on, man?
I was looking forward to the game tonight on MLS, and then I remembered the Unimos SAP issues from last week. Have you heard anything about them fixing that?
I have not. I have not heard anything about them fixing that. I think that is I think that's a provider issue, not necessarily a Unimos issue. I think it's all about whether or not your cable provider gives you the option to take advantage of the secondary audio program, whatever that thing's called. So I hope it's fixed. I would rather not talk about it tomorrow or Monday. I'd rather not talk about whether or not people were pissed off on Friday about SAP. So I'm hoping it's fixed. Who's your cable provider? Let's name and shame them right here.
I have Optimum, the good old Cablevision, and
okay.
They have the change to Spanish audio SAP, but when I tried it last week, it just paused and then went right back to Spanish again.
Okay, well, I hope that hopefully it's fixed, man. We'll cross your fingers for you. Hopefully Cablevision has their crap together on a Friday. I appreciate that. You got anything else?
That's it, Jason.
I appreciate it. Hey, look, we just got a shout out from Quick Goals Twitter account because I mentioned them as part of the set from Fox Soccer Channel back in the day. That's awesome. That makes my Friday. That makes my Friday. The Soccer Swell on Twitter. Klinsmann coming out and saying Zelalem is ready to come into the U.S. men's national senior team already. Any thoughts? Yes, I have thoughts. Again, and I mentioned this earlier in the show, if this is about getting him cap-tied, if this is about getting him in the program, getting him assessed at the senior level, I'm fine with this. I am. I think that he should play for U.S. youth teams if he's eligible and there's a spot, and why wouldn't you have a spot for Gideon Zelalem? And I don't think he's ready to be a major contributor to the senior team at, say, the Gold Cup. But if Klinsmann wants to give him a once-over, again, I'm not gonna complain. I am a little bit more conservative, and I'm not going to draw any comparison to Julian Green. I think this is a very different situation. I think it's a very different kid. He plays a somewhat similar position, but he has a very different game. He's obviously coming up in the Arsenal system, and they're bringing him along slowly. I'm not overly concerned about this. My immediate reaction was sort of, what are you talking about? No, don't rush him. But I'm not sure that that's what Klinsmann's doing yet. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt until he proves otherwise. 347-756-6276. What you got on your Friday? Bring it to me. Let's talk about it. Whatever's on your mind. 908, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason, Matt in Jersey. How you doing?
What's going on, Matt in Jersey?
Hey, I just want to talk a minute about, you're talking with Jeff about NWSL. He was mentioning, RSL possibly bringing a women's team into the fold and, a few years down the line. I'd really like to see some more MLS teams get involved and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's good to see when, the men's pro teams start to get involved in the women's side of the game, try to help it grow.
Yeah, look, I mean, let's the reality of the situation is that the women's game it needs someone to help shepherd it along a bit. And in this case, I mean, it'd be great if the women's game could stand up on its own 2 feet and the league could survive. And there were no questions about insolvency and not being able to pay players and everything else that's happened to women's leagues over the last couple of years, last decade and a half or so. But the reality is they need someone to help support them. And if the MLS teams who have established marketing teams, have established relationships in the community, who are fixtures already, or even if they're a new concern, like, say, Orlando City, and I have no idea if they have any interest at all, But just if you have all of that stuff in place and you can bring a women's team into the fold. And again, as Jeff said, the reason that NWSL is viewed as healthier than its predecessors is because they're not paying a lot. Now, that's bad on one hand because these women deserve to be paid a living wage to play soccer. Damn it. But if you need to bring it along slowly as a matter of reality, then let the MLS teams help that happen. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look over at kind of the WNBA, I mean, it gets backed up by the NBA, and, that's a big reason why it's still around. So, it could be the same thing with MLS kind of propping up on NWSL until it kind of gets sea legs.
And Matt, I think there's some, obviously there's some cultural elements to women's professional sports that need to be broken down. I mean, there are ceilings that need to be broken through by women's professional sports. And I think sometimes, and this is the case with the WNBA, sometimes you have to beat people over the head with this and say, look, this is good. This is good sports. This is good pro sports. This is good basketball. This is good soccer. Pay attention to it. And that takes remaining going concern. And in order to do that, again, you need just a little bit of propping up, and hopefully the MLS team step up in that regard. Totally with you.
100%. 100%. I mean, I covered women's college basketball in when I was in college, so I have kind of a soft spot for that. And, once you watch enough high level of it, it doesn't matter who's playing. As long as it's a good level, it's fun to watch. And I watched a couple of games on, I think it was ESPN2 last year of NWSL. I mean, I think it was the Thorns, and it was good soccer. It was fun to watch.
All right, Matt, anything else, man?
No, just looking forward to the MLS weekend, man. And like you always say, it's kind of nice to it's fun when you don't really know what's going to happen this week or as the season goes on.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks. Appreciate the phone call. There you go. Enjoy your weekend. 347-756-6276. You want to jump in. You got a couple of minutes in the last show of the week. It's been a really good week for us. I remember Alejandro Bedoya and Brad Guzan. My brain doesn't really work otherwise. I know we've had some fantastic guests. Janusz Mihalik was on this show. Obviously, today's guests, Dave Martinez and Jeff Kassouf. Trevor, remind me. Trevor and I have terrible memories when it comes to who we've actually had on this program. We're the worst. We are the worst. Who else did we have on this show already this week? Just David Cartledge came on this show, gave us La Liga thoughts. That was excellent. Our friend Eric Gomez came on this show this week and gave us Liga MX thoughts. I'm looking for the schedule, by the way. Our friend Grigo Mark says that Cholos plays tonight. Who does Cholos play tonight? And is that on my TV anywhere? Because I will watch that. In addition to MLS, I will watch Cholos play. First place in the Clausura standings down in Mexico. Good stuff there. 347-756-6276. Anything else on your mind? Anything else you'd like to talk about? Perhaps? I don't know. Again, what are you looking forward to this weekend? It's a good place to start. Any games in Europe that you absolutely feel like you have to watch? Anything? What am I going to see when I wake up tomorrow if I flip over to NBC Sports? What am I going to see? Is there any good games on? Is this one of those weekends where it's a lot of duds? I haven't even looked at my schedule yet. Monaco, okay, that's in France. I don't really see much France. Bayer Leverkusen and Stuttgart, okay. My computer has decided to quit on me. So I don't have, I don't have the schedule up right now. But I can take a look at it. F1 comes back Sunday. This is a soccer show, Trevor. You can keep your fancy European racing to yourself, friend. This is not racing morning. Sounds terrible, by the way. Racing morning. All right, games today. Valencia, Deportivo La Coruña. That's a little bit later on this afternoon. Obviously mentioned the MLS match, Houston Dynamo hosting Orlando City Soccer Club. Let's look at the Premier League. Crystal Palace and Queen's Park Rangers. Oh, fantastic. Arsenal, West Ham. Okay. A little London derby action there. Leicester and Hull. So you have a couple of lower level teams in that game. Sunderland and Aston Villa. So relegation scraps all over the place. West Brom and Stoke City, Burnley and Manchester City. So there you go. There's your Premier League schedule. All right, I got a couple of tweets on this. We've got about 3 minutes left before I turn this show off or sign out. So let's go ahead and do this, okay? Paul Douglas says, I imagine you want to talk about that Fusion American Outlaws article as much as you'd like to get a root canal, but ... And so I will talk about this briefly. The reason that we didn't make a big deal out of this, and Noah Davis is an excellent writer. He knows soccer inside and out. He's been covering the American game for a long time now. I respect the hell out of Noah Davis, and I have no issues with the premise of his article, which is that there are some troubling cultural elements inside of American Outlaws. I think that's a fact. I don't think that there's any arguing that. And if you are going to say, well, not all the American Outlaws are racist or homophobic or misogynist, you're missing the point. The point is that stuff has cropped up in enough places that it's something that needs to be dealt with. And this is what I would ask. That we stop with the, I've had a good time, I've never seen any trouble, and then the back and forth. Well, obviously some people have. Okay. This is why I haven't addressed it today and why I didn't ask for phone calls on it and why we haven't made a big deal about it, because I don't want to get sucked into a tit for tat. American Outlaws is great. I made so many friends. I love it. And then another call who says, I've heard some racist chants. I've seen some guys, grope women. I've seen guys be drunk idiots. We know guys are drunk idiots way too often. American Outlaws is 30,000 members strong. It's got individual chapters across the country. The central bureaucracy of the organization is not all that great in terms of controlling everything. I'm not sure that they ever can be. From the conversations I've had with the founders of AO, I have no issues with them particularly, but I do think they're taking the weaselly way out on this. Do not say, hey, we've got a code of conduct. We ask everybody to sign a pledge. There's nothing we can do about controlling every person. No, there's not. But you need to have some sort of system to allow for feedback. You need to have some sort of system for people to identify where the problems are so that they can be rooted out. Because if you're going to call yourself all-inclusive, if you're going to say that this is a supporters group for every American soccer fan who wants to be involved, you cannot have a hostile environment. You can't. I'm sorry. You just can't. If you want to go have a supporters group for the type of people who use racist slurs, who grope women, who are homophobic, who are misogynist, whatever. You want to have a group for that? Fine. We'll go over there and we'll ignore you because nobody's going to have anything to do with you. If you're going to have an all-inclusive group, please address this directly. That's the only thing I'm going to say. That's the only thing I'll ask of this. I don't want to go in depth into the story. Noah Davis wrote a story which I believe it came from an honest place in terms of his intent. Some of the anecdotes in there are what they are. Every single one of them should be considered seriously. And again, this does not mean that everyone who has had a good time with AO and has never seen these things can't still have a good time with AO and enjoy their membership. But you should be diligent. You should be concerned because the bad apples are giving you a bad name. All right. I'm done. That's it. I'm out. It's Friday. I'm tired. I was up at 3:30 with kids puking on me. I just can't do this anymore. I really do appreciate you listening to the show. Make sure you go to backheel.com and buy a mug right here. Backheel.com/store right here. And then go to 3nilfc.com and buy a Soccer Morning t-shirt. Right now it's in blue. I think Dan and some people have been going back and forth on some other colors. We may look into that. Somebody asked for a Orlando City purple Soccer Morning t-shirt. Can we do that? Is that allowed? I don't even know if that's allowed. I don't even know. World Soccer Talk.